Hello everyone, welcome to OSS CTF exercises answers. In these videos we'll be covering answers to group exercises as well as individual exercise that we have on the CTF engine. Most of the individual exercises will be, the videos for those will be published once we finish the CTF, so it will be around spring. Some of the group exercises, however, like this one, we will be releasing answers to them as soon as the end, or probably 2 or 3 days after the end. That way, you guys get the opportunity to try it again. You'll not be getting points for them, but you will still get the chance to see how it worked and give it a shot again to see what you missed before and try to learn from it. Most of our group exercises will be focused on things that are what we taught on the workshops, as well as it will require a little bit of Google search and learning certain libraries, APIs, different functions and stuff like that. So it will require some amount of work, and you guys kind of got to see that example with this first group exercise we did, because this will actually require you to um, do some Google and learn some API methods for a program. So let's get started with this group exercise. In this group exercise, we gave you guys a bash history file. So as you can see, the pastebin file name was .bash history, and it had some bash commands written out on them. The reason for that was for us to kind of give you guys an example of what bash history might have. So as we covered on workshop, bash history usually contains previous terminal commands that the user ran, so basically history of what they have been doing. And if a company is not has not turned off logging or has not prevented some sort of sensitive data logging on it, you will be able to see some sensitive credentials, API keys, tokens, usernames and passwords and stuff like that. So there will be chances of having those on bash history, and that can be useful. Let's say if you get into a server and you want to show the impact of it, you can always check out bash history and so the company, these are the things I will be able to do. Sometimes you'll be able to use the username password that was on the terminal in the history to kind of escalate privilege. For example, if the user typed his MySQL username and password and you are able to log in as that MySQL user, then you might be able to dump all the database info. So that might be one example. There might be others with, if they have some kind of another user role that they have access to and they saved it on a file but they removed the file later on, it can still get logged on the bash history. So we'll go through that right now. So I'm going to kind of break down all of these bash commands, because that's always helpful if you're reading a bash history to see what the user was doing. So let's get started. On the first command, we can see he ran a command called ls. And in Linux, because this is a Linux environment, ls stands for list all the files in the current directory. So it seems like this user wanted to see what files and directories he had on the present directory. So he wanted to see what he had access to, what he could get, what he could read and stuff like that. So after that, he created a directory with the mkdir function, make directory function or command, and the directory name was system test. So on this, after seeing all the files and directory on that on his present directory, he made a subdirectory called system test. Now on his third step, he created a file called commands.py, which is a Python file, and he created that, as we can see, on the system test directory. Now we know that he created system test on second, so he's basically writing a program probably, and we can see he touched it, but then he ran python commands.py. Now this says that he probably tried running this. The only thing that's missing on this bash history that makes it interesting also is that he has not gone into system test yet to run this, but probably he did and bash history didn't log it. So as we can kind of see, he created an empty and then he empty Python file and then he tries running it, but because potentially it has no codes, he decides to write his test code, and there he does python commands.py who am I. Now this looks interesting because we might ask, why is he doing who am I on a Python file? So you can kind of see what he might be doing here is that he created a Python file that accepts a user argument and probably runs it as a system command. So who am I is a system command that tells you what your current user is. So what he did here is he created nano command spy. He wrote something to the Python file, and then he wrote probably something that passes a user argument and then runs it through a system command on Python. Once he does that, he wanted to debug it, so he ran it, and probably it worked, probably it did not. We do not know about that. Then we know that he created another Python file with touch command, and the file name was log underscore announce.python. So after he touched it, we don't see him writing, so we don't see a nano, but he runs the Python file with python log announce xoxp and bunch of number and hash, and then a string that says this is a test run, ignore. Then we see that he does his cat. He wants to see what his bash history is, and then he cats a null dev null file which makes the bash history empty, and then he creates a credentials.txt file, and he outputs or he echoes the username root and password secret, like his password for root user, to a creds.txt file. So after that, he installs a MySQL server and MySQL client, and then cats the etc password file. So we kind of went over what he did. With cat, he's basically outputting the content of it. With echo, he's writing this string to his creds.txt, and with log announce, he's running this file, he's creating files. So the part that you have to do next is that you have the bash history and we asked you to exploit it. We did not give you any servers, so there was no place to log in or test any of the credentials. So this part, I'm going to zoom in on this one right here, echo, let me minimize that. This echo username root password, this was a red herring that we wanted to throw it out there. We just wanted to let you guys know that, you know, that is there, but you cannot do much with it because you do not have the server. And I'll get into explaining this a little bit later on. So now we're going to kind of see what else probably had a secret token on it. And you can see there's like, he does a lot of other things: listing, creating directory, touching Python files, like creating Python files, writing to them, and all that. And the only other place where you see something like a token is this, when he does python log announce xoxp and all that, and he says this is a test run, ignore. So we see that he passes this on this Python file, and that looks like a token, right? So the next step on this is to understand what this token is, and that's where Google will come to use for us. So let me zoom out. So now we're going to copy this token and look it up on Google. See if Google gives us any hints on what this could be. Alright, so as you can see, as soon as I pasted that, I see a bunch of Google results that says how do I get my Slack access token, what is a bot token. So there's types of token Slack, and you can see on the API Slack, docs, auth, there is this exact format that we're looking for. So let's look at, so it looks like it's Slack, right? So let's take a look at type of tokens and kind of understand what all these tokens are. So in Slack, we have 5 different token types. There's a verification token. This is basically to verify requests coming from Slack. So if you're writing a server that receives requests from Slack, that's something you'll probably use. Legacy means it's old, it's better left to the past, probably kind of deprecated at this point. This is for workspace apps. We have bot tokens and user tokens. Now let's see which type of token do we have. So for user tokens, they begin with XOXP, which makes sense, that's what we have right now. Bot users will start with XOXB. Workspace will start with XOXA2, or also that's for the access token. For refresh token, it will be XOXR. Legacy, these tokens were associated with legacy custom integrations generated. If you're building a tool, just use an internal integration. So they're saying that legacy token is basically deprecated. It's not that useful, it's pretty sensitive, so you know, it gives you the full or personal scope of the user that created them. And yeah, and they're saying do not use that, use an internal integration with scopes. That way you do not give more permissions than needed. We'll cover more of this API stuff, API security and stuff like that on Spring when we go over API security, generating API tokens and storing them, and informations like those. So there's verification tokens are deprecated, so signing secret. So this is not what we need. Overall, after looking this, it seems like we need user tokens, which is XOXP. Now we need to see what we can do with this. So we will try to understand how Slack API works. And in this case, we have XOXP. So I'll do sample Slack API XOXP, and hopefully there are some examples by Slack. So there's a hello world Slack OAuth. Let's see if this gives us anything. Seems like that's, so we kind of see some things here, but it doesn't give us more info than we need. So we know to interact based on what we see on this code. If you are familiar with Node.js, you'll see that they're making a request to https slack.com API with code and then redirect URI. So it looks like we might be hitting slack.com/API. So let's take a look at that. Go here, invalid code. So okay, so we're not doing OAuth. So let's just see if our token works, right? Let's give it a shot because we do not know how the API works yet. So we're gonna do a blind shot for now and then get back to this again. So invalid code. So that might not be the right way to do it. So now what we'll do is try to understand the API more. We know we have a user token. Now we need to see what we can do with it. If you have used Slack before, you know there are users, there are channels, there are messages, and all those infos. So in this case, as we know, we cannot log into anything. We have not been given access to anything. So let's see if we can understand what this token does. So let's do Slack API token info or something. So there's OAuth token method, create and generate. Okay, so this doesn't give us much info. We did some Google search, didn't get much. Now let's look into seeing how their API methods work. So let's do Slack API methods. Now we just want to see a working Slack API so that we can play around with it. So we do API methods and we get list of all the methods that are on Slack. So there's user profiles, users groups, search, RTM, reminders, reactions, pins, OAuth, all of those types. So we go up and we want to see what API.test is. So let's test our API, and it says check API. This method helps you test your calling code. So you can also use this method as a very basic way to test whether Slack's Wave API is functioning. And it says it will respond with error if there's an error. If there's an example return, it'll just show a random jargon. That way we know it worked. So this might be a good way to get started to see what this does. And let's see what token type it works with. So it works with workspace token and a user. And this is good for us because we have a user token. So let's give that a shot. It doesn't give us much info. So it says this is a post request. So probably a get request won't work for this. So let's give it a shot with API.test. And it also tells us what parameters we need to send in. So let's go here. Works with that. It doesn't tell us where to pass the token or the code or anything. Request authorization header. So let's learn more about how that works. And it should give us an example. So right here tells us this is how we will make a request. So if we're sending some kind of a post request, this is what our sample request will look like with curl, post, header, authorizations, content type, and all that stuff. So let's give that a shot and see how it works. So in this case, we're going to use command prompt. If you're on Windows, command prompt on Windows 10 has curl, so we'll be able to use it. So we'll do curl tag X. The capital X tells what kind of request we're making, whether it's a get, post, there are other HTTP header requests, delete, and stuff like that. In this case, we need post, and as this tells us, we need to pass our authorization key. So this will be our token. In this one, I'm just testing how the API works. So we're learning how the API works at this point. authorization, guess it was beer and our token. Let's verify that's how we're supposed to do it. Yep, we got that one right, so we do that. Now they say this accepts content type to be application JSON. We'll go over what those kind of mean on the web app security portion, because we will be playing around with content types a lot when we go to web app. And also APIs, content type becomes super useful with API calls, so we'll be using that. So here we pass the content type. For data, I don't think we're passing anything because this is a test, so I'm just going to give it an empty one. And in this case, because it's a JSON, I'm just gonna put a curly bracket, and at this point I believe that's all we need to do, and just pass our Slack link, API slash the test. Oops, I messed that up. Let's cancel that. See if that will work. Okay, so colon result host blah blah blah. So it's probably wanting us to put the URL in the front. Oh wait. As you can see, I kind of messed up with the date. So that's supposed to be data, not date. If that doesn't work, we'll just paste that and see how that works. Alright, so we got a response that says okay, true. Now we're going to see if there's any different response when I give it a wrong authorization header. So let's give it 1. It just gives okay, true, but we know we're able to hit it. It says colon resolve host beer, so it seems like I'm passing the curl in the wrong way with the authorizations and headers. So I'll look into that and see how we do it. Now let's see if we just paste this, how that will react. So obviously it's not accepting this. Oh well. Alright, so that was kind of interesting. Usually those curl formats will work, so I'm gonna use an online terminal or online Python request to play around with the post part. But let's see, now we kind of know the calls to it, so we'll be making mostly JSON requests. Let's see what permissions we have. So will this work? Let's understand it. So it's a get request, no scope is required, no permissions or anything required, probably. It says pass the token. The only interesting part here is that the token type is only workspace. So if I were to try this here, it'll say not, oh, I haven't passed the token. There we go. Not allowed token type. That's because it only accepts workspace and we have a user's token. So we need something that will tell us what to do. So let's go down and see all the methods again. So there's bots.info. Get information about a bot user. So let's give that a shot. Let's understand what it makes, what a workspace it allows, or token. So it allows users and requires users.read permissions. So let's give that a shot. See if we have access to users.read, bots.info. Alright, so it says error missing scope, which means we do not have a permission. And it says I tried to request users read, but this token has access to this. So this is helpful because now we know what permissions we have. So it tells us we have permissions to identify, bot, we'll look into what that means, incoming webhook, npim : history, groups : read, and npim : read. So let's see what each of these mean. So let's give a shot to npim read. Search Google, scopes. So this tells us what we can do with this. So it tells this scope lets an app view the names of the people in the group messages. Works with the web API, supported user token. So that's so far good, and it tells us what API method works with it. So npim.list. It's a get request, so we do not have to send a post. That's optional, so we don't have to worry about that. So the one thing that's required is a token. So what happens if I do npim.read right now? Or list. There's no groups, next cursor, so it's returning an empty result. Alright, we know that it at least worked because we didn't get a missing scope. Now let's see what groups call and read does. So it tells us we need a user token, perfect. Events, and we have methods. So there's groups info and groups list. So let's see for groups info, we send a get with a token and a channel ID. The only problem, we do not have a channel ID yet. So let's figure out what groups list does. Obviously we need groups colon read, we have permission. It says list all private channels that the calling user has access to. So whatever groups this bot or this token has access to, we will be able to see them or list them out. So let's give that a shot. All of these are optionals. The one thing we need is a token. So the call for that is groups.list. So we're going to list all the groups. I misspelled that, so let's fix that, and here we go. So it says okay, true, groups, and then we have list of all the groups here till here. So we have ID, which is the channel ID, the name, which is log announce. It's a group and it was created when creator who created the ID of the creator basically. Is npm false. Members, we have one member on the group. Turns out topic, there's no topic. And value, the purpose of this group looks like is to announce security logs. Alright, so this seems like we're in the right place now, because something that stood out to me is the name of the group. If we go to bash history, we'll see the Python file was also called log announce. So it seems like we're on the right path. Let's see if we can get the groups info. So we're gonna copy the channel and pass that in, and then do groups info. Alright, so we get the group info. It tells blah blah blah, list, last read, okay, latest, blah, message, bash history. So it tells us the most recent message, and the message is bash history is bad sometimes, here's your flag. Perfect, so we got our flag. It tells us that's the flag for the CTF, and it was sent by user and unread count 0, so we got the flag easily. So all we had to do was get the groups info, and if we go to groups info to see why we got the flag, we can see that it will return a group object with last read, topic, purpose, and stuff. Those are all the errors, warnings. So this tells us what we'll get in return, and one of the things that we get in return is the latest message that was sent. Now in this case we were able to do it. Now let's say for example if the message was not the latest one, let's say if it was the first message or the second to last message or stuff like that, so meaning we still want to see if we can read the group's messages. So for that, let's go back to our permissions. npim read did not work, so let's see what npim history means. This method retraces history of messages and events from a multi-party direct message. So if it's a multi-party direct message, it means it might be a group message. So if there are multiple users there, you can also have a kind of a group but not a group, where you basically have like a group text type of thing. So it won't be like a channel, group or channel, but it will be like, let's see if I add 3 more users to a private message and I talk with them. So we'll be doing an MPI history. I still need the channel ID, which is perfect because I have that ID here. Right here we have the token, so let's just change the groups info to whatever the call is. Turns out it's just npm history. And we're able to see all the messages. So compared to this, where we just saw one message, we can see all our messages here. So the latest message was the flag sent by this user. And there was another message where this user set a channel purpose to be announced security log. So that was another message. And another one was where this user joined the group. So in this case, we can see the message, but if you're on Slack, you want to see the users list, you'll usually do users.list. And in this case, because we do not have permission, it does not give us access. So you won't be able to correlate what this ID stands for, because we do not have the permissions to do it. So we will cover about Slack APIs and stuff in the future, probably when we go over API securities. As I said before, we're using tokens. But for now, we did get the flag. We went over Bash history. We went over what it covers, understanding Bash history, using sensitive data from Bash history to exploit something. So in this case, we exploited the Slack data, or we exploited the Slack instance for this company. So whatever this company was, we got access to their Slack instance through this token, and we're able to read some messages out of it. And now I want to kind of explain why we did this CTF with Slack specifically, is because this is something a lot of companies use. So Slack is something almost I would say a lot of companies use. And the problem with that is, let's say if a regular user, or a simple user, decides to leak out or put his XOXP token on somewhere public that an attacker can get access to, it will pretty much give them an attacker access to a lot of sensitive information, especially when your Slack channel or when your Slack instance is locked out in a way that only your company employees can sign in or sign up. An attacker can use the XOXP to see the details of your Slack, list all the channels, read messages, and do whatever they want depending on the permissions. So this is not a imaginary scenario. This has happened a lot. So let me kind of show you what happened that kind of shed some light to what Slack tokens are, the risk of it. So a group, a company called Detectify released a blog on Slack tokens, and it says, the title is Slackbot token leakage exposing business critical informations. So they basically found that people were posting their Slack tokens on GitHub. So when they will create GitHub issues, when they are creating GitHub projects, companies were putting those tokens out. So for example here, TaskBot, anything you created like a bot or something, people will put the token for that. And they also explained how big the problem is. People didn't know what the impact was, so they didn't understand. And you can see people were able to read the password, what's the Vimeo password again, and all that stuff. So yeah, it was pretty much a lot of bad things that happened with it. So this company found out infos about it. They reached out to the affected developers, affected companies, and then afterwards, after doing a responsible disclosure, they created a blog post explaining the risk, so that other users, anyone else in the future, can understand the risk of using a token publicly, or putting out the token publicly on GitHub, on cloud IDs, or anything like that. And the best practice, as they say, never commit credentials inside code ever. So never hard code your credentials in the code. Use some other resource for that, whether it is Secrets Manager with AWS, or using environment variables, or any some kind of a sensitive way, some kind of a way to make sure no one gets access to those tokens. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and feel free to take a look at it. I will post this Pastebin link for you guys on the Red Team channel. The CTF for this specific CTF exercise was closed, so you will not be able to see the CTF on the CTF website. But once I upload it on Pastebin, you are free to you are free to take a look at it and see if you can get the flag without looking at the video, or doing something, or kind of challenging someone else, your friend or someone, to see if they can figure it out. All right, have a great day, guys.